What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another Shep's Garage video. Yes, I know it's been a while. I went on vacation during my March break to Los Angeles, but today we are going to do a little bit of an update video on my MK8 GTI button situation. And do I still think it is an issue regarding with the new generation GTI? So without further ado, let's get straight into this video. But first, if you're new to this channel, this is the first time seeing my face on your screen, don't forget to please click that subscribe button down below for more MK8 GTI content. Oh, there it is. And other car content as well. I am going to try to switch up the car content on this channel as it is becoming way warmer out and it's becoming spring and summer. I'm definitely going to be filming a lot of car shows, so make sure you guys stay tuned for that. And by subscribing, you also help me to become a full-time YouTuber. Before we step inside to show you guys the button situation on the MK8 GTI and whether if it's an issue or not, I do want to mention that I finally did another modification, I would call it a modification, on the MK8 GTI that I said that would be done, and it obviously wasn't done until another couple weeks later, but this is the first video I am filming with it. I finally got my windows tinted. As you guys can see, here is a representation. This was before, this was after. I got 35% tints all around, and I think it looks super good. 35% is the legal limit here in Massachusetts, and I think it looks really good. I didn't want to go too dark because I do a lot of night driving, so I think it looks pretty good. I didn't want it to look too dark, and I just think, I don't know why I didn't do this right when I got the car, because it just looks so good with the tints and everything. As soon as I get wheels and a bunch of other stuff on the car, spoiler maybe coming soon, wheels coming soon, who knows, this thing will look killer. But the window tints aside, let's talk about the button. Alright, let's talk about the button situation on the MK8 GTI. So I made a video about this, I think right when I got the car, and I basically explained that I didn't really find the buttons a major issue. I thought that I was going to really grow on them. I didn't like the steering wheel buttons, and I especially did not like this touchscreen up right here. However, I've had the car for over a year, and I actually just hit 11,000 miles, so I have spent some serious driving time in this car, so I can give my full thoughts on, is this still an issue after about a year after this car's launch. Let's do a little bit of a look around at all the physical buttons you actually have in this car. So don't mind the window switches, they're taped like this because I can't roll the windows down for a little bit, a week or two. But anyways, you have your window switches and window controls here, which are physical buttons. Your lock and unlock, which are physical buttons. Down here, your start, stop, your parking brake, and your park and your parking brake are all physical buttons. Same thing with the locks and window switches, they're all physical buttons. Other than that, your SOS button up here, which I'm not going to press, that's also a physical button, and your hazard light switch in the middle is also a physical button. I think that that's a law type of thing. It has to be a physical button. So other than that, and your garage door buttons up here obviously, but other than that, you don't really have a lot of physical buttons in this car. They definitely downsized in the amount of physical buttons in this car compared to the Mark 7, which people say is the best GTI generation to this day. Now, regarding not so physical buttons, obviously you have these buttons right here, which are like your hard controls, and then these buttons on the steering wheel here, which basically are capacitive. So you touch it and it makes it feel like a button when it really isn't a button. It's just kind of a touch screen type thing. And then you have these buttons up here, which are not buttons and are just like touch pads, I guess you can probably call them. Same thing here, right? These are basically touch pads. These are the only haptic thing in the car. So let's start off with my, I won't get into the complaints yet. I'll just start off with what has grown on me. And what has grown on me are these steering wheel buttons. I quite like these, and I haven't really found myself to ever accidentally touch one of these buttons ever throughout my lifetime. The only time was when I was tracking this car, I accidentally, when I was holding the steering wheel at 9 and 3, I accidentally hit the heated steering wheel button, but that was only once. Every time I actually drive the car, I either drive with my two hands down here or or just chill with one hand right here. But other than that, I've never really accidentally touched these buttons because I know how sensitive they are. Once you kind of have the car for a little bit, you sort of get to know how sensitive these steering wheel buttons are. They also are pretty responsive to your touch. So for example, like pressing the view button here, it automatically does what I need it to do. There's no lag. It's very, very responsive, and there's no delay in anything when I press the heated steering wheel button. It automatically does what I want it to do. There's no issues here. I quite like these steering wheel buttons, and I honestly think that this is an acceptable upgrade, I guess, from the Mark 7. I know in Europe with the base Golf, these buttons are actually physical buttons, so I think it should be an option, I guess. I think it would be nice on the base S trim level if this steering wheel can go to the standard Golf steering wheel with the physical buttons. I think that would make the S maybe a little bit more popular for some people and make it a little bit more stripped down, as well as with the smaller infotainment system. I also guess you can call these buttons, but the paddle shifters here on the back of the steering wheel, I use these all the time, and this is how I mainly drive the car, is with the paddle shifters. I haven't actually gotten upgraded paddle shifters yet because I actually really like the look of these, but I also really like the Golf R ones, and all the aftermarket paddle shifters for this car just look hideous in my opinion. So I want to wait till Golf R ones, or someone sells the Golf R paddle shifters, so I can upgrade these ones to the Golf R. But anyways, moving on from that to the not so physical buttons and what my opinion is on those. Now this is where my opinion starts to change. Now we get to the not so physical buttons in this car. Let's turn the infotainment on and let's lower the volume. So as you just saw there, this infotainment system, specifically these buttons down here, as I explained in my last video, are not illuminated, which is very strange. Hopefully they update this to be illuminated, but the only way you can tell you actually are hitting what you want to hit with these little like grooves in here separating the volume from the air conditioning. Now, I do want to talk about mainly this bar here, specifically the volume. Now, when it comes to sort of this bar here, I actually don't mind the touch controls for the air conditioning. It's within reach for the driver, and it's not super complicated. All you have to do is tap to your desired temperature, and I can easily do that at a red light, or I can easily do that you know, cruising on a very straight road. Like, obviously I wouldn't do that in the turns, but on a very straight road or at a red light, I can easily find my desired temperature. This volume though, I gotta say, I've had the car for over a year. I hate this volume controller. I would have much rather this to be something way more useful, and for them to just instead add a volume knob down here, because I mainly use the volume control on the steering wheel the most, and I think that's how most GTI and Golf R owners on the Mark 8 generation use their volume. This volume control is very good. I'm glad that they added one on the steering wheel, and what I like about this one is I know when I'm turning up the volume, and what's also nice is that it slides and I can easily get to my desired volume, once again, at a red light quickly or on a very straight road quickly. This volume control here, I think should have been something way more useful. It could either be to turn, I think this should have just been air conditioning, maybe turn the fan up higher or lower, maybe for heated seat controls. I would have loved to see a heated seat control or a heated ventilated seat control within these buttons. I know that there's the tap for the heated seat, but for the ventilated seat, it obviously goes within the infotainment, which I guess Volkswagen thought heated seat over ventilated seat. I don't know how they came to that consensus. Moving on to some of the buttons I'm still not a fan of is these 4 buttons down here. Now, I have to say, this climate button here, I've never used. I've always just tapped right here because it's more in the line of sight of the driver. However, I have used these 2 buttons down here, the parking view button. I usually use this quite a bit. And I also use the drive mode selector as well to pick and select the drive modes. So I use both of these quite a bit, and I also never use this assist button. I think that these two top buttons could have been something else. Maybe for a heated and ventilated seat button, which would have been very nice, or something to do with air conditioning other than just taking you to the climate control. But these buttons here, some of them I use a lot, some of them I don't, but not a fan of them anyway. Moving downward, I love this shifter setup, and I want to touch upon this because there are some Volkswagen models like the ID4 where they just ruin the shifter setup completely and the window switches. So this is such a nice setup with this little chicken nugget shifter, and I'm glad I chose this over something else. Now, if you own a manual transmission, obviously your setup is different, but for the DSG, all you have to do, down for drive, up for reverse, half touch for neutral, P for park. That's literally all you need, and it's that simple, and I'm glad that they added this easy of a process, as well as physical P button for park and a physical parking brake as well, so latch as well. So I'm glad that this setup is easy. So good job, Volkswagen, there. Now, window switches and locks are very self-explanatory, so I'm going to move on to up here, which are the sort of physical sort of controls with the car. Now, these controls consist of basically all your lighting settings, your front fog lights, and your defrost and rear defroster settings right there. Now, I quite like that they added this sort of physical setup panel right here, because it's easy just to touch it and move on. Touch it and move on. I'm glad that they added these hard controls, because you use your defroster a lot. You're going to want to turn on your fog lights a lot. So I'm glad that they added this panel right here, and it does work pretty responsively. Even though they aren't physical buttons, they do work well. And I'm mixed emotions on if I like this or not. I also would have loved to see physical actual buttons up on the dashboard. They have so much black plastic here, piano black trim. They could have easily added physical buttons for a lot more things driver focused. But overall, I mean, this is acceptable, but still not a fan of that. Not a fan of just this part here. So yeah. Regarding this infotainment system, I already did a full sort of my thoughts video on this infotainment system already, but I do want to touch upon a couple things that Volkswagen did that makes this infotainment system a little bit more useful. Now, I know some people saw the video or article where Volkswagen admitted that this infotainment system is garbage, right? And I do agree with them. This isn't the best infotainment system I've ever used in a car. I'm more of a fan of BMW's iDrive system and Mercedes-Benz MBUX system. Those are the two best infotainment systems that I personally have seen in a car. This is far from that and never will be. However, I do want to touch upon a couple of things that make it useful, because what Volkswagen did is they sort of buried all these settings in here, so you have to touch all these menus to turn traction control off, for example. I do like how the factor where you can add shortcuts to the infotainment system, for example, your start-stop, your AC, your garage door, and obviously traction control. However, what I would like to see in a future maybe software update with this car is maybe you can add more shortcuts, maybe on a second page or something. I would like to see that, and I think that that would be pretty useful, you know, in my opinion. So, the conclusion to this video is I don't think that the buttons or infotainment system are really that bad, specifically mainly the buttons. This car does get a lot of hate towards these buttons. However, I think that that's just coming from people who really didn't spend a true good 6 months to a year with this car. Let me know how long you had your Mark 8 GTI, if you still hate or like the buttons within the car. I would like to know your guys' thoughts as well. However, me personally, I think that that's where all the hate comes from regarding the buttons in this car. I just don't think it's that bad, but yes, it does need some improving whenever the Mark 8.5 or Mark 9 GTI or Golf R ever do come out. this would be, I did mention some things that could need improving. That little square up by the infotainment system that controls the air conditioning and the volume, that could use some improving, and some of the hard buttons I think could have been replaced for more easier things like heated seats or fan speed. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you did, smash that like button, comment down below how long you had your GTI, or if you plan on getting one or Golf R, and let me know if you hate the buttons and what other videos you guys would like to see. Thanks so much, see you guys next time, peace.